I feel like a big part of my role as a Christian and as an artist is to just be an example of somebody that's really working their faith out and almost in a sense giving people confidence to be vulnerable with each other as well.
The Profile. You're listening to Premier Christian Radio.
Hello and welcome to The Profile here on Premier Christian Radio. I'm Jess Lester and this is the show where we delve into a well-known Christian's life and testimony. It's brought to you in association with the UK's leading Christian magazine, Premier Christianity, and you can grab yourself a free sample copy of the latest issue by visiting premierchristianity.com/free sample. Today on The Profile, I'm joined by Chad Gardner. He's the frontman of the band King's Kaleidoscope. We're going to talk all things Zeal, the most recent album, the inspiration behind it, and what is coming up next. Chad, let's dive straight into talking about Zeal. That's the latest album for all of you out there who haven't heard it. Go and check it out. But could you tell me a bit about how the concept for the album was born?
Yes, so we wrote that album last year in the span of about, I think 9 months, 8 or 9 months, pretty quick. And the whole thing is really about kind of losing sight and just a grip on the most simple childlike faith you kind of have at the beginning of belief, regretting that a lot and being really sad about that and kind of fighting to return to it and fighting to kind of rediscover it again. And so the whole journey of it paints this character Zeal as an actual character who's rediscovering himself and trying to find himself and fight for zeal and rediscover kind of childlike wonder and faith.
So you mentioned it on Flat on the Inside, which is like this little talking interlude on the album.
Yeah.
You know, the church is kind of full of boredom and apathy. What did that look like for you? Because I'm imagining that you were in this place as well when you wrote Zeal, or at least you were aware of people around you that were in this place.
Some of the emotion on the album is me being frustrated with my friends who've kind of completely thrown in the towel and moved on and in their bitterness and jadedness just kind of given into it. For me personally, I just felt really comfortable. I felt like I was in a season of plenty and in a sense sort of it can be a hard place to be because you kind of forget your need for Jesus and also you kind of forget your desire for him. So the album is made up of kind of both of those feelings. Well, a lot more than just two, but yeah, frustration with my friends, frustration with myself, but mostly just a deep longing to rediscover zeal. Yeah.
Do you think that the modern church has a tendency to like cover up the realness?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak. It depends on what we're talking about when we talk about church. I think that any time that faith and belief is packaged and marketed for dollars, it gets really dicey. And that's when real humanity tends to get sucked out of conversations in art. So in a lot of quote unquote church, that can happen for sure. Because it's hard to communicate nuance. It's hard to communicate pain. People don't know what to do with it, really. How
do we talk about that realness with young people? Because I feel like that's the area that we're lacking in, is we're not talking about this pain and this suffering and the difficulties. And that's not just church, that's just in general.
Sure.
So, like, how do we ensure that we're being real, but also master the balance of being real without being a mess?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of wisdom with especially kids. Like, I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and that just takes a lot of discernment and care and understanding of who they are and what they can understand. Most of art, the art I create with King's Kaleidoscope, though, is, I guess it's meant for, adults or at least older teenagers can really understand what I'm saying. And at that stage, I'm just trying to be 100% vulnerable with where I'm at and kind of nothing less. I feel like if I hide stuff or I tweak stuff in a way that doesn't feel as vulnerable as I can be, I'm almost lying in a sense is what it feels like. I feel like a big part of my role as a Christian and as an artist is to just be an example of somebody that's really working their faith out and almost in a sense giving people confidence to be vulnerable with each other as well.
So music has a huge amount of power. Do you think music as an art form is enough to like promote these changes that we need to see?
I mean, I think art in general changes a lot of things throughout the course of history. You know, thought and debate changes a lot of things as well. But art, it gets to such a deeper place in people because we really are governed by what we feel in so many ways. And I think what connects us is also empathy and understanding. That stuff creates love and human connection. And when you have real art and art that's done really, really well, you're able to connect to the artist, and it actually brings whoever's listening to it, you know, closer together. And that definitely causes change for sure.
Now, I know people are always asking you to explain what your lyrics mean, but I think I've got some that you haven't explained before. But yeah, they're from Oxygen, and I love this song so much. I've been waiting to ask you what these mean to you. But I'm going to play a little bit of Oxygen for everybody at home. So for everyone listening, this is Oxygen by King's Kaleidoscope.
I can feel the memories again in this field of foreign oxygen. I'm awake without the medicine. I forgot the joy of suffering. I can feel the memories again in this field of foreign oxygen. I'm awake without the medicine. I forgot the joy of suffering. I lose it all to find you now. To find you now. I lose it all to find you now.
You say, I'm awake without the medicine. I forgot the joy of suffering. I love that lyric. And for someone who's like felt some serious suffering, I was like, wow, I resonate with that so much. But I want to know where that came from you.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of the lines that I write they're pretty subconscious. And so I do think about what they mean before the song goes out. That one probably has multiple meanings, and I actually haven't figured out in hindsight what all of them are. One of the clear meanings of that lyric is that I've been on and off different types of medication for anxiety my whole life. And one of the things that I experience when I'm not is that I'm more sensitive, and I miss it when I'm on medication. It's like medication can numb me to a point where I kind of lose sight of how fragile I am and how much I need kind of to walk with God in every minute. And so that line kind of gets at that. Like, I'm awake again without the medicine. I forgot the joy of suffering. And that's probably the biggest reason subconsciously that I was writing that. 'Cause like I said, the album kind of was coming to this period of like comfortable numbness in a sense. I'm on meds, I'm feeling good, my family's healthy, nothing crazy is going on in my life. And that should be a season where I'm really worshipful and praising God for it and experiencing him in that way. And I'm not good at that yet. Like I haven't flexed that muscle of faith enough to really grow that. And so I found myself like, oh my gosh, why am I in this sort of immature stage of faith where I almost need something crazy to be happening, where I feel this bigger need for Jesus. So I know there's a little bit of a disconnect with that, but because I should be able to experience him through all of it, right? You know what I'm saying? But emotionally, at least in that song, there's a little bit of that line where it's like, I miss this joy that I had in my suffering that I've had before, you know? And ultimately, yeah, I want to be able to experience joy when times are good, you know what I'm saying? But looking back, I was realizing like I have all this and it's not enough, you know? What I really want is the joy that I can find in suffering. And actually, I forgot the joy of suffering was the very first line I ever wrote. I'm just remembering this now. When I was sitting in church, I don't remember what was going on in the service, but I wrote that down, and that helped influence the entire idea behind Zeal and the whole album. That was the first line of the album. Wow. Yeah, I just remember that right now.
Now, I'm going to bring this one up, and I'm sure people ask you this all the time.
Okay.
But let's talk about the F-bomb in a prayer.
Yeah.
I know this is something that a lot of people have different opinions on. I want to know what led to that decision for you to include that.
Most of my songs, the lyrics are super, super poured over. I write them actually with a team usually, or at least like a friend or two other writers. And, you know, we're trying to create the most imagery, the most beautiful poetry we can on top of these wild songs we have, right? Rarely I'll get a song where the lyrics are more just like emotion, stream of conscious emotion. That song, that's what that song is. It's very stream of conscious, barely written down, singing it by myself, just very raw. And when you get a song like that, you just kind of, it is what it is, and after the fact, you kind of decide what you do with it. So that song came out at an extremely vulnerable time for me with my anxiety, and in a sense, it almost felt like a testimony, where I sang the first part of that song, and it was just really intense, and I was playing it for people, and I didn't know what to do with it. It just was like this very vulnerable sharing that I was kind of sharing with my friends, like, guys, this is, what do I do with this? I was saying this word, I can't use this word, like, this feels like where I'm at. The second part of the song, it took me like a couple days to just even be able to listen to it, because it was so emotional for me. And as I was listening to it, I was just doing a lot of praying, and I really clearly felt the presence of God and sang and quickly wrote the response, like God's response. It felt very clear, like his response, like it felt like my vulnerability in the song was very clearly met with God's truth. And so I sang it and it kind of became a whole thing. And I could barely sing it. In fact, if you like listen closely, I'm like crying at the end of that take because it's like 2 takes and I'm kind of done. It's like, this is going to be what it is. So you have this powerful thing where God is realistically like meeting me in my vulnerability. And it feels like this complete testimony story of like, here's me and here's God. This is what it is. Now what do you do with it? Because it doesn't fit in the US, at least. It does not fit any sort of mold that you could market it towards anybody, because we're a Christian artist and we're saying this word that can't get played on the radio, let alone like they don't want to put on a CD. And after a lot of going back and forth and talking to my friends and pastors, like, what do I do with this, guys? Ultimately, like, the advice that I got and the conscience that I had is, this is a testimony as it is. If there's any group of people I should be able to share it with in the world that would understand and that it would help, it's my brothers and sisters in the church. Like, these are the conversations we're supposed to be having with each other in our living rooms, like every week, you know? And as a believing artist, I want to be able to resonate with as many people as possible. And this is something that's going to, at the same time, like, I totally respect people with different views about scripture and stuff. So we did make a clean version. Nobody listens to it. Everybody, like, you can't even barely find it on Spotify because literally nobody cares about it because it doesn't resonate. So I cleaned it just out of respect for people with different views, because I still think it's a powerful song and it still does work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, that's kind of what it was about. It was like, I want to be able to be me in front of the church. And if that means that King's Kaleidoscope no longer is going to get sold in Christian bookstores in the U.S., which it doesn't, is never going to be on the radio, which it isn't, is never going to be invited back to any festivals, has festivals cancel on us, which all of this stuff happened, then good, because I don't want to be part of that market. I'm not trying to sell Jesus for a life's, you know, a lifetime career to be able to make money and stuff like that. Like, it's just not, I'm not interested in that at all. I'm interested in being myself, fighting for faith, and encouraging others to do that. And that's what we're going to keep doing.
Amazing. So you must have learned a lot about yourself in the process of writing Zeal, because to me, when I listen to it, it kind of sounds like musical therapy. Not just for others.
All of my music is musical therapy.
But this is so explicit in its musical therapy. This is like, wow, I am laying myself out. And did you learn anything about yourself that you didn't know through writing Zeal, or through just writing all the albums in general?
I definitely am always learning about myself through working on albums, because there's such emotional deep dives. Like, I'm always, you know, I'm always sifting through my heart and my emotions, especially with my friends while I'm making it. There's so many conversations that we're always having, and they're really good at, you know, helping me, in a sense, discern myself. But on Zeal specifically, I'm trying to think what I learned about myself. I'd never really considered this aspect of where I came from that much until in the middle of Zeal. Kind of halfway through it, my grandfather passed away, which, I mean, incredible life. And during that time, I realized that I'm kind of, in a sense, like descended from this legacy of faith. My grandpa and grandma helped start this church. Literally, like, he helped build it. They had 5 kids, all my aunts and uncles. They're all Christians still. Their spouses are believers. My parents met at this church. I grew up at this church, and everybody always did music. And so going through that when he was passing, just looking through all his old stuff, thinking about his life more, I kind of realized about myself, oh my gosh, I'm kind of directly still doing in a different way exactly what this kind of lineage of my family is doing. And you know, I'm working on this album called Zeal, where all my friends are really jaded and they kind of lost a lot of hope in what consistent belief can do for their lives long term and things. And I realized I didn't have almost any friends at all that this was their family story. Like, I felt like a unicorn. I was like, well, yeah, there's no divorce in my family, and everybody's like a believer, and they kind of still practice Christianity, and they're all still parts of church, and they're all musicians. And how am I here? How does this happen? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't happen in the world ever. And in a sense, it gave me this feeling of like, so in a sense, I can be a voice for like, this can work. Like this, I almost like I get to be the glass half full guy and be that voice for a lot of people, that not everything falls apart, you know. A lot of things do, but I don't know. I never thought about that before. And then during this album, fighting for Zeal and all this stuff, dealing with all my friends that were super jaded, it was kind of like, why am I so optimistic about faith and belief and longevity and faithfulness? And it was like, oh, because I watched it my whole life, you know, and I didn't even realize I was watching it.
Your friends who had this kind of like difficult patch, obviously you've grown up with the church like really heavily influencing you throughout your childhood, but did you have any like really significant difficult patches?
Yeah, I don't have like, I don't have an example of like a major season of doubt, to be honest with you. My difficulty has always just been with mental health. It's just been with like, okay, this part of my brain continues to tell my body that it's going to die, like this fight or flight part. And these meds aren't working, and this meditation isn't working. And I'm just going to trust you, Jesus, that you're still here to take care of me. That's kind of like the faith fight for me, is when neurological pathways in my mind that I've like created with, you know, fear and needing control and all these habits I've developed to avoid my fear, when they're all firing off at the same time, that's when it's hardest for me to trust God that he's going to take care of me or that he loves me. In a sense, it'd be like the hardest times for me is like when I'm having a panic attack. That's also, I'm learning, is the greatest time and almost invitation for me to really trust God and for him to be with me. And those are the times where I get to, you know, practice and exercise faith in the biggest ways.
Let's stay on the topic of mental health, because you mentioned that you saw a poster that suicide is the leading cause of death for men under the age of
45,
40, 45
Crazy.
In the UK. Why do you think that is?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot right now about how overwhelming information is, and how I don't know if my mind and my soul can literally handle like Twitter news. I know that sounds crazy.
No, it's not.
But I'm serious, like that level of information about how broken the world is like God level. Like he knows that stuff times way more, and he can handle it. And I don't even know if I can handle the like 0.0000001% that you see on Twitter. It's just overwhelming to me as like just a broken human. Like I can't handle it. And I think that there's so much hopelessness that is fed to us through the news. And yeah, that's definitely part of it. Life just feels overwhelming. We're overstimulated by just pain and death all the time from every angle. But I don't know what else contributes to that. I mean, who knows what we're going to find out in the next 20 years of like how social media is affecting all of us. Because I mean, depression is like the biggest thing in the U.S. It's just like mental health is a real thing for real, and I don't have the answers for it. I know that personally for myself, I cannot watch the news and I can't get on Twitter or I'll lose it because I can't handle it. That's one of the things, you know. But there's so many. Do
you think there are any ways that, maybe in the US, but particularly in the UK from what you've seen as well, that like we could be better as a community, as Christians, that we could be better at harnessing in order to welcome people in need? I
mean, from what I have experienced, like listening is a major thing. You know, a couple years ago, my wife and I went through just a bunch of marital conflict. We did this super intensive counseling, and it was so incredible. But one of the greatest things I learned during that, just about our relationship, was that listening and understanding equals love. Like, you genuinely start to love and care for someone the more that you understand them. And so, you know, if you want to, like, Jesus Band-Aid somebody, you're going to approach it with your head and not really your heart. And we can feel that out. Like, you know when somebody's trying to fix you. You don't want that. You want to be loved and known. So when you start to know and love somebody and hear where they're at and empathize with them and not try to get them to a certain place, that's where the real relationship starts, and that's where trust begins. And I think it's just as, I mean, like, I have friends, I mean, there's even guys in the band that aren't believers at all, and my relationship with them grows as I know and understand where they come from, why they think the way they think, and I respect them for it. Like, genuinely respect them for it. And I disagree, but because there's so much respect, they're even down to go across the world and sing Jesus Loves Me, you know, with me, even though they, like, don't know what they think about it. You know, King's Kaleidoscope has always been kind of Chad and friends. And I've got people they cycle through all the time. And within that larger group of, you know, it's different people in the studio, different people for different tours or whatever. I mean, yeah, we have people all across the spectrum of faith. And, it's part of the beauty of it is that because there's so much respect, just genuine love for each other, it's not an issue at all. And they're kind of down to actually talk about stuff because they don't feel like they're trying to be fixed.
Premier Christianity Magazine.
Are you fed up with fake news or bored of bad stories? We think it's time for something different. I'm Sam Hales, editor of Premier Christianity Magazine. Every month, our team publishes stories of lives transformed, testimonies, miracles, healings, and loads more good news. We're here to encourage you, excite you, and keep you up to date with all that God is doing through His church. That's why we're proud to bring you a magazine that's different.
For your free copy, visit premierchristianity.com/free sample.
Let's, if you don't mind, stay on the topic of the heavier stuff.
Yeah.
But you've been through it, you know.
A little bit.
I read through some of the stuff you've been through over the last kind of 10 years. Your wife being in a car accident, losing your grandfather, experiencing family death, stillbirth.
Yeah.
There's a lot. How do you reconcile your faith in these kind of situations?
To be honest, when stuff hits the fan that much, I actually tend to run to God and cling to Him. So those are not the moments where I feel like my faith is tested in that way. Those are the moments where my faith is, in a sense, refined. And in one way, it's because I feel like I don't have another option. When my wife and I lost our firstborn son, it was it was right after her dad had just passed away, within 10 weeks of getting brain cancer, and she'd been in a car accident, and we both had to leave this church. It was super unhealthy, which is where we both worked. So it was like all the stuff you could think of, you know, at once. And I would say to my friends during that time that I felt like God literally just gifted me the gift of faith. Like he handed it to me, said, like, I'm going to help you continue to trust in me. I'll be here for you. I'll be here with you. And I just held on for dear life through that time. And He was really faithful. I mean, I think, like the night we delivered my son, even though we knew he had already passed, is probably one of the most peaceful nights I've ever experienced in my life. Which, I mean, how traumatic is that, being at the hospital, you know, with your wife and like, but here's the thing about all this. It's not up to my performance of faith how faithful God is to me and how much He's wrapping His arms around me. He just does it because I'm His son and He loves me. And that's why I love Him. You know, like, I'm changed by his goodness, not by how much I can muster up my own faith and discipline and holiness. Like, he just loves me, and it makes me want to love him more. We're either run into our sin or run into our religion, and neither of them has really anything to do with the gospel, and the fact that Jesus loves us when we're, I can't say that word, but religious somethings, and he loves us when we're full of ourselves, basically, and he loves us when we're full of ourselves the opposite way, and we're running to the world.
I love what you said about wanting to get back to that simple childlike faith. You've mentioned that phrase a lot. I love that. Were you inspired, or are you inspired by your own kids in thinking about how you can get back to that childlike faith?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, maybe I haven't really thought about that too much, but I'm sure I am. Being a father makes you think so much about how dependent kids are and how dependent we are, how untrusting we are. Like, I think about that with my kids. Like, I'm never trying to get them to do anything dangerous or like bad for them, and they'll be super scared sometimes to do stuff. It's like, it's okay, it definitely helps give me that perspective on my own faith, that there's a beauty in simple trust and just believing things at kind of their face value, and not assuming the position of God and ultimate understanding, that we could even begin to understand all of it. It's such a mystery. And as soon as we start putting too many lines down, and we get lost in those arguments, and we call, in the band, we call those cul-de-sac conversations. I don't know if you have cul-de-sacs here. That's where, the houses are in a circle and you just keep going around and around and around and around and around. Yeah.
Did being a dad change your relationship with God? In the sense that, like, you're just saying about trusting and like trusting that parental figure.
I mean, of course it has. I don't know super clearly how it, but like I was saying before, being a dad definitely helps me understand kind of this father-child relationship, the dependency, how much I don't know what is good for me. Like, there's this quote by a pastor author named Tim Keller, and he says, if you knew everything that God knew, you would make the same decisions for your life that he has made. It's that kind of stuff, It's like, wow, you know what's good for my holiness, not what's just good for my perception of happiness. Usually my perception of what's going to make me happy is super skewed anyways, and God's out to make me holy and deeply joyful.
Are you particularly inspired by any biblical characters when you write? Because I feel like some of the stuff is very like straight from the Psalms kind of vibes. I can see a little bit of David in there. I wondered if there was any like particular biblical character that you resonated with kind of on a spiritual level, but lyrically as well.
I mean, I think David is such a good example when we're suffering, because he's so vulnerable. And that's actually what, at the time, that's what my pastor, I was sending him the song, he was like, whoa, it just sounds like David, when I sent him a praise, like, it sounds like a psalm. And I was like, that's kind of what I think, man. So yeah, I think because it is music, David is such a clear person for me to resonate with, because he's being so emotional and vulnerable in the same way that's kind of what it feels like to write songs, for sure.
And what musical artists you're inspired by? Because I read that Kanye was one of your biggest inspirations and he was one of your favorite childhood artists.
Yeah, but here's the thing. He's the world's favorite artist. I don't care what anybody says. Any of your favorite artists, if you were born in like the 80s or the 90s, your favorite artist is Kanye. I believe in Kanye West 100%, and I did before he was a Christian. I mean, at least as a guy that God gave a gift to be a musical genius and force and artist. So, yeah, he's influenced me since I was a kid, huge way. I grew up as like a hip hop DJ. That's how I learned how to make music. So, kind of all the neo soul, conscious rap, Common, Talib Kweli, like all that stuff. Kanye Lupe fiasco. That stuff was like what I grew up with. And then I remember in ninth grade, which so I was like, 13 or 14, I still wasn't even listening to rock music then. I hadn't learned how to play guitar or anything. And these like guys at school, my friends were like, you have to listen to Radiohead. Like, I don't know if I can handle it, man. I know it's supposed to be incredible, but I'm not into that stuff. And they gave me Kid A, and this is weird, I actually forced myself to listen to it for like a week until I got my head around it. And once my head wrapped around like, wow, this is incredible, then I became a big fan of Radiohead and found other rock artists I really liked and learned instruments and then smashed it all together and created King's Kaleidoscope. Yeah.
And here we are. I think that music is one of the biggest possible influences that we can have over kids and young people.
Yeah.
For me, coming to faith, music was the one thing that got me there, because I didn't really want to sit and listen to a half an hour sermon. But I'd sit and listen to half an hour of King's Kaleidoscope, for example. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, music is like magic. I mean, I've never read that. There's that like book, Your Brain on Music, that a lot of people, I haven't read that yet. All my friend musicians have. And they always just talk about how crazy the science is of what sound waves going through the freaking air that go into your eardrums, make them wobble, how it makes your brain react with serotonin. I mean, it's crazy what music is. It's this miraculous thing that God has created that moves us emotionally. And when you put truth with it, like real truth that's grounded in like scripture, yeah, it'll definitely change you for sure.
Was your target audience, did you have a target audience when you started writing for King's Kaleidoscope?
No.
Was it ever supposed to be like this kind of cool, hip, young generation thing?
No, I mean, no, it's just what I like. I'm just regurgitating all the stuff that has moved me in my own way, as all artists do. I will say that King's loosely had its start as part of a college church plant. So when I was 21, I moved into the city, into Seattle, helped start a college church. So there was just a lot of like, youthful like vibrancy to that whole thing. And years later, when I was 25, I left that church, and that's when I started making records. So it's kind of, I guess there is some aspect of like we started as part of like a youth thing. Yeah.
If you could go back to your childhood self, let's say around the age of 7 or 8 years old, and you could tell him anything, and I'm talking faith, life, music, whatever you want to tell him, what would you say to childhood Chad?
Gosh, that is what a timely question. I was talking with my therapist. We've really been trying to just continue to break down what are all these patterns I've created in my life to avoid fear, and why do I have this issue with panic attacks and all this stuff. So for me, the biggest trigger for all that is travel. Hate flying. Coming to the UK sucks for me. Going to Australia is terrible for me. And so we're talking through that, and we actually, I ended up saying I can visually remember being 7 or 8 years old, having a panic attack, can't breathe. I got my inhaler. I had asthma back then. Looking at myself in the mirror, like dead on in the eyes, and thinking, I'm going to die right now. What's going to happen to me? God, are you real? Do you love me? Will you help me? What's going to happen to me right now? Am I going to die? Just like the most intense thing ever. What my therapist and I were working through is, what would you say to that child now, Chad? As a dad, what do you say to that kid? Because that kid is still a part of you. He lives in you. He's the one that's in a sense had to go and try to control his environment in the world, and that's affected my whole life, and all the ways I try to avoid anxiety and anything that would make me feel like that again, So I've literally been thinking about what I would say to myself as a 7-8-year-old boy. And it's the same thing that I say to my 4-year-old now as a dad. It's just love. It's like, Chad, you are so loved and so precious. I would give myself a huge hug. I would tell myself that God is with me, and literally it's just going to be okay. Like, all will be well because you're in Christ and he's in you. And not try to gloss over it or make any of it go away, but I would just tell myself that I'm really loved and that I'm going to be okay. And I'd give myself a big hug.
You've teased about new music. You teased the other day about new music. You teased last night about new music. What's happening with new music? Tell us about it.
I'm just back to making stuff. You know, last year we made an entire album, an entire like visual world. We've started, you know, we've pretty much taken around the world at this point. And so I took a little break. And now I'm getting antsy. So I've started making a bunch of beats again. We'll probably have music out by the spring or the summer if the pattern holds from how things have worked in the past. Mm-hmm. We also have a documentary on the whole making of Zeal. Mm-hmm. That's like it's sweet. It's like 25 minutes long. Follow me around, all the guys, and you just kind of hear more about that whole project.
We've got about 5 minutes to go.
Great.
I want you to give me the quickest ever writing lesson, like musical songwriting lesson that you've ever given. Give me some tips.
Oh. Okay. Number one, this is what I do. Okay, this is just what I do. I get as many people in the studio as I can. Mm-hmm. They all jam on the beat that I'm making. They make crazy stuff. Then I go for like weeks and I just edit, find all the things I love about it, make a beat. Then I only listen to that beat exclusively for like a month, all day while I'm driving around in my car, while I'm doing dishes, whatever, and I just sing random gibberish to it. Whatever real words come out in the gibberish, for me, it tends to be my subconscious connecting with something. And I'll just take 2 of those words, and then I figure out what the image is, and I write a song around those 2 words. I just sing, like, literally straight gibberish over the beat I'm making. Maybe there's 2 real words, and I'll make a whole song about those 2 words.
So it's a long process.
Yes, it is. It is.
You take your time.
Yes. I don't know. That's literally the hardest way to make a song. Nobody should follow that advice.
No, it's your advice, and it's perfectly valid. What's your favorite song that you've ever written across all of the albums, and why?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I like different songs for different things. Right now, I really do love The Rush, and I really love Oxygen. Those 2 are my favorite right now. The Rush paints such a compelling sort of call to action and faith. It's really clear. It's incredibly complex musically. I mean, that song took us hundreds of hours by so many people to pull that thing off. And then I think Oxygen, like we talked about earlier, is just because the lines in the opening of that song helped inspire an entire album and world for me that I'm kind of still living in. So it feels like something that just really resonated deeply. And I know that, like, there's other songs that are super powerful too. A Prayer, of course. And the last one that maybe people wouldn't think about that I would say I really love is actually Gone, which is on Beyond Control. And that song is kind of a song that I'm honestly kind of singing to my wife, my close friends, about almost an apology of, like, I'm really sorry for the times that I'm so disconnected from you because I'm, like, so anxious. And yeah, and my wife, like, reads basically scripture to me, like, through this fog. Like, her voice is affected. It sounds like she's trying to, like, comfort me, like, through this haze that I can't see through. at the end. That one's just, it's really special for me in that way. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So how can we find out more about King's Kaleidoscope?
Follow us, please, on Instagram, King's Kaleidoscope. Twitter, King's K World. You guys kind of use Facebook here, huh?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, King's Kaleidoscope. I don't use Facebook, but you can follow us there. I mean, we do. We'll post it out there, of course.
Thank you so much, Chad, for joining us. Remember, keep your ears open for new music. You heard it here first. I'm Jess Lester. You've been listening to Premier Christian Radio, and that was my interview with Chad Gardner from King's Kaleidoscope. For more great interviews like this, check out Premier Christianity Magazine. That's the publication that sponsors this show, and you can get a free sample copy at premierchristianity.com/free sample. Sadly, that is all we've got time for today, but we'll be back same time, same place next week with another great interview for you.